Hey, what's going on, everybody? And thanks for joining us again. We are live. We got some hot topics today. I think the rest of my friends here in the studio are a little scared to be in here because who knows what wake is going to come from this one. But on the docket today, we're talking about the OpenAI Developers Conference, Dev Day in San Francisco, which presents new major advancements with special guest Jon Astacio in the background here. Brian's going to be getting him connected. Also, a man killed during a hockey game leads to manslaughter charges. Let's see how that develops moving forward. And then finally, the media pushing black supremacy is costing innocent lives. Time to have a real conversation. That being said, the reason why we do these live shows is to get you involved. So please jump into those comments, send this around. We want to get you a part of the dialogue. So please don't hold back because that's going to maybe humble part of these difficult conversations. That being said, let me introduce my co-host and my good friend, David Cunningham. How you doing?
Hey, it's nice to be here. I've always wanted to do a live show with Buddy Holly.
You know, I had to go with the clear lenses so I don't look like a goon when I'm on the inside, but I don't know if glasses are really the look for me. But you know what? That being said, I look good in anything.
So it's nice to have a different perspective on the live show. That's a cool little gadget there you got.
Yeah, and they can see what we're working with.
Yeah,
and see the evolution of what we got going on.
I don't know if this is the best view, well, except for me here, but definitely. But definitely, yeah, it's good to have everyone here. It's good, nice crisp fall day. We're 1 week out of election, so it's nice to see some discourse going out and about here. But absolutely, we can't do this show without our magician behind the keyboard here. Brian, what's going on?
What's up, people? How's it going? last month to get your ski passes and get outside, do something exercise-wise.
Love to hear that.
All
Love to hear
right,
that.
all
All right.
right.
Before we dive in, I'm trying to buy John some time as he gets thrown in here. That being said, the Browns squeaked one out. And they are becoming a legitimate contender in this race to the playoffs.
And they're not just beating bad teams, too. They're beating good teams. They got the 49ers. They're beating the Ravens. They beat the Bengals. We got some legitimate teams. And now I think they really should be, and quite honestly, really got one legitimate loss. That Ravens loss, they just got blown out. Seahawks,
we should have won, but hey, they're a good team.
They're a good team. And then the Steelers game, definitely, if just take away the first play of the game, we win. First play, pick six.
But how about this? You saying that really makes me recognize that I think the first play of most games this season we have fumbled figuratively, but now becoming literally.
Yep.
Like, what is going on?
We don't get off to a hot start.
No,
that's a real issue. We saw it last week. Just get pummeled in the ground. All of a sudden, it's about halfway through the third quarter. We're gonna wake up today.
So let me ask you this.
All right.
Did our main man, the massaging king, Deshaun Watson, look like a $250 million man?
Well, he did in the last drive. You know what? That's the only drive that really matters. To be honest,
right.
It's
true.
In that game. You could fumble the first drive. Whatever, as long as you get the last drive. Yeah, I'm still not entirely impressed. He hasn't lost us. Well, I don't want to say that yet, but he hasn't. He's not looking as bad as he did the beginning of the year. He's definitely getting his feet underneath him, and I didn't think it'd take this long. I thought it'd be 2 or 3 games and we're good to go. But now I think you look at the rest of the schedule here. I really feeling like 2 or 3 actual losable games going in.
But this upcoming weekend is going to be our toughest one. That being said, we are very well situated in a very difficult division, and that's with the greatest running back in the league having his second surgery today. Ooh. So God bless Nick Chubb. Hope he's doing well. That being said, I know we got our good friend in the green room, and we can get going on the Browns. Don't hurt so bad. Like, let me just leave it with this.
All right.
We, as a friend group, were watching them at a bar, and we threw in the towel with a minute left still in the first half. See you guys. I got yard work to do. This ain't fun. It's not worth drinking. Going home. And before we knew it, we were back in it and having a great time. That's what this season has been.
Yep.
I've been beaten and battered like a domestic violence victim for so long that I just kind of accept it. This is Stockholm Syndrome. I'm here to stay. And when you don't beat me, to me, I've gotten so comfortable when you beat me down every Sunday that I don't even know the difference anymore. I'm just numb to it all.
Yeah, comfortably numb.
Not suck. What?
Comfortably numb.
Comfortably numb. So that being said, let's hop into our first topic. I'm really excited to get involved here. The OpenAI Developers Conference was just this past week on November 7th. They call it Dev Day, and it was hosted in San Francisco. Almost 1 year after OpenAI released ChatGPT, they hosted this conference to bring in major speakers on the topic, but then also create kind of a fruitful think tank around the topic of AI and start discussing how we are going to further develop this new tool and technology. Like Apple's iPhone's App Store in 2008, OpenAI is inviting developers who are excited about this new wave of technology to hopefully create a new enduring platform. That being said, I want to introduce my great friend and co-host of the Rethink Solutions, Jon Astacio. Bring him back in here from the New Age Human. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing good, man. Thanks for having me on today.
I couldn't be more appreciative. Brian, you're probably going to need to hold the microphone closer to the thing so we catch his audio.
His
better.
mic should be live on the show.
Oh, perfect.
Oh, good.
Perfect.
Good.
If you cannot hear Jon as he's talking, please comment so we know.
Can you hear me?
This is a new technology we're working out. That being said, Jon, you got me really excited the last time we spoke about the OpenAI Developers Conference and having the opportunity to kind of dive into, I guess, this new space that they're promoting. I couldn't be more excited. I think it's going to create a lot more tools. On the flip side, though, there's always those people screaming the fears to look out for as these things continue to develop. So can you give me an idea of how we can traverse that balance, the fears versus the excitement of what, these new conferences and developments are bringing, and kind of what we can expect with ChatGPT, which has become probably the most mainstream tool using AI.
So, if I understand correctly, you're asking about like, should we be afraid of this? Should we embrace it? What are my thoughts, so to speak?
Correct.
It sounds about right.
It sounds about right. Well, it's interesting because I've been, I grew up watching Terminator, and then you have all these different AI movies that are just saying like warning, 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 like just movie after movie after movie, and I'm like, well, at least in the future, that's like way out there, and we're like right there. And this conference, and I'm still new to it myself. A lot of people are still new to it. Every time, if you just do a search on AI, AGI, all the terms, YouTube, Instagram, all the social media, like it's just getting flooded. And I guess if I were to put like my perspective on it is, uh, and I'm doing my best to just do the research, but essentially like what I see is it's a tool. And just like a hammer, it can be used for good or it can be used for bad. And at the same time, uh, cell phones, right?
Yeah.
Do you remember a time before cell phones where you knew your friends' phone numbers by heart?
Man.
It's a distant memory.
It's a
That's
distant
for
memory.
sure.
For real.
All right, well, right now, off the top of your head, how many numbers do you know, like memorized,
Oh
of
my
people that
goodness.
you need to call in
And you
emergency?
know what's funny, John? You asking that question, what you really made me confront is the fact that the phone numbers I remember don't operate anymore. Like my grandmother's or my old home phones. Like
Oh, yeah,
all
your
the
old
phone numbers I
landline.
still have internalized literally don't exist.
And it's hard to forget too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you're not wrong with that end. I think we get real like calculators or learning how to do long division. Some of that stuff you use in like grade school. The more tools you have at your disposal to make it easier and quicker, the less we get out of it. I wonder with AI if that becomes like short sentences, small paragraphs, emails, like small like real short form communication. We just go tell me or tell my buddy thank you for giving me that gift, or
Right.
write me a love message or something real small like that. Do we see that? Do we lose that, like kind of that intuition we need to get it back?
Yeah, no, I agree. You're becoming just like with couch games. I just had this long conversation with a couple of people probably an hour ago because it's just a hot topic where think of like technology and how it's disrupting how you interact with people, just like you said. There was a time where you go outside, you knock on your friend's door, and you're like, "Can Jimmy come out to play?" And then you go out physically and you play. And then now you don't do that anymore. It, I should be darker. Let's just say that. And like, but like, yeah, you go outside, you get a tan, you get color, your eyes get adjusted to the sunlight. You know, it's a muscular thing. It's a social thing. And if you're out of practice, just like a married man or woman going back into the field and after divorce and trying to date again, like they're lost. And just imagine, I think Gen Z right now just being lost, where they didn't have like Boy Scouts wasn't a thing, Girl Scouts wasn't what was isn't as much of a thing now as it was in the past. And I went to Boy Scouts, and thank God for that, because it allowed me to navigate just that just nature, really. People and nature.
Well, I think you bring up a good point too, but what we sometimes lose, we also gain on the back end as well. So, and then not being able to do long division, but now I'm able to use Excel pretty proficiently, able to use some of these.
Wow.
Have you ever seen your grandparents try to use the internet or use computers? Try to pull up a PDF. That's that type of skill set we learn as we go through. So with AI, is it a new skill set we acquire? Or let's take dating apps that might be really relevant here. You kind of have to learn how to use the dating apps, learn to slide into someone's DMs and be charming in that manner versus showing up to a bar, showing up in person and doing that a little bit differently. I think these are some of these skills that what we may fear losing on the front end or on the back end actually in the front end, we may gain X, Y, or Z that might be a lot more helpful for us down the road. We don't necessarily, at this point, we don't know what we're going to get out of it yet.
So let's wrestle that, because I think it's a fun topic for the three of us to explore. Jon, being someone who's with New Age Human, as somebody who's focused on maximizing human potential and empowering people to reach their maximum potential. That being said, I'm curious, how do we ensure that this tool is a hammer and not a bludgeoning weapon? How can we how do we create a society? Because here's the thing. You can, like heroin or alcohol or most things, there are people that cocaine could easily be illegal for a lot of people. I'm not even going to say most, because
We
that's
went to drugs real quick.
I'm sorry?
So we went to drugs real quick.
Come on. They just legalized marijuana in Ohio. Yeah, man. No, I'm just kidding. So that being said, okay, I'll concede cocaine being an extreme case. Even that being said, there are human beings that could easily dabble in that world and it not impact them, or even some that might actually thrive with being able to control themselves moderately, not taking advantage of it, and it being something that can promote themselves. Hence Adderall, right?
Yeah,
Adderall's
that's the first one that came to my mind.
One chemical, degree off from cocaine, but because, pharmaceuticals paid big bucks to give it a different name, we give it a different connotation. Yeah. So I'm only saying that because this is clearly, how about this? I use this as an analogy all the time. When people talk about social media, I make the direct metaphor to medicine. If we were to create a new pill, every time that pill gets released, you see it on your commercials, it says, this will stop heart bleeding. But for 20% of you, your butt's going to just bleed as well. And you're like, well, I hope I'm not those 20 people. And you pop the pill and your heart stops bleeding. But 1/5 of you have a bloody butt. That's not fun, but it's true. Yeah. So that being said, it's a risk we're willing to take, because we got to stop heart bleeding, and we can't make a Band-Aid that fits all. So I'd say the introduction of social media was something similar to that, when we have school shootings and anxiety and depression and all these social issues that are symptoms of it. It's like introducing a new pill to society, and most people are going to thrive from this. Most people are going to take the advantage of it, but there are going to be casualties of a new technology or a new development. Yeah. So this will have its casualties. How do we take the proper steps to ensure that, like, again, we just acknowledge the fruits of Boy Scouts and a world without having this technological world. I do think us as millennials, being able to see both sides of the veil, we lived a traditional world and now a new technological world. We get to have a fruit that the new generations won't really have. So how do we keep those new generations grounded? How do we prevent these technologies from truly warping us down a road that we can't fix?
Yeah, well, do we do that with regulation through the government, like protecting, businesses? Or imagine if we understood the ramifications of the internet now and we're able to regulate it before then, we'd probably see a lot more newspapers, and we'd probably see a lot more traditional kind of brick and mortar businesses staying afloat versus what we have with the internet. Now, on one hand, we have Amazon, we have eBay, we have all sorts of these different websites and tools that allow us to have a better life quicker. But the unintended consequences of that, we have traditional journalism as we knew it 10, 20 years ago is now, it's not really all that existent. It's now a very, very niche business where we don't appreciate. Now we get clickbait. Now we get articles. We get short form video like TikTok that may or may not be helpful to society down the road. So do we overcorrect what we need to do here, or do we let it play out and be reactive instead of proactive for the regulation?
Jon, what are your thoughts?
And that's a tough question. So as I'm going through my mind, I'm trying not to get too deep into the rabbit hole, but
come on, dive in. We live in the rabbit hole at the Rethink Tank.
Well, as far as like just metaphysics, quantum physics, and all that, I like to think of humanity as moving up in different levels of frequency. The frequency as we are evolving as a race, thinking high level. And just like a car is as dangerous as the driver, some may argue that you need to take another driving test when you hit past 80. Should you really be driving? Right? It's all about the driver. And you have one side where it's like regulate it and make sure that there's as little wiggle room as possible. But then you narrow down creativity and progress. But then in my opinion, people don't talk enough about what about the people? How do we improve upon our ability to understand and play with this technology? Because anytime we create technology, it is a reflection of ourselves. And some people may argue that we've had the ability to do amazing things, got amnesia, and now the technology is our effort to get back to where we used to be. And so this technology, I feel like I would like to put focus on enhancing people, getting them to a place where they know better than to do a lot of just heinous and not turning it into a bludgeon. Whenever a weapon turns into like something bad, like a hammer or car turns lethal, a lot of times it's because someone has is just having a hard time behind the wheel. And it could be drama, mental drama, physical drama, trauma, right? And if we can help work on those things, the person will just have more people behind the wheel, so to speak, of AI or whatever tool that comes around the corner that are going to work with it for the better. But it's that interesting balance that we're working with and really assessing and judging and trying to figure out, the likelihood of that person doing something bad with that and what is bad, what is good, and all that. So it's a very interesting mix. And a lot of this technology is forcing us to reflect on ourselves, on who we are, what our potential is, and how likely are we to do something not so good.
So I got one response for you so I can flip it back to you because I really want to hear your thoughts on it. First, I really like your point about frequency. To really transcend this issue, you got to just keep enhancing your frequency. So I do appreciate that. However, when proposed with this question, if the scary piece to me is if the antidote or the answer, the solution is to enhance the people. Okay.
Yeah.
That's the solution we just came up with. Follow my math here. What was and I loved it. It was poetry. My man John sounded just like Lil Wayne. Is the car more dangerous than the driver? You know what's scary is that inquiry and the train of thought that follows it will present the need for finding a way to balance the car and the driver. The unique thing about this technology, and this technology alone, this is what makes this the most unique space to speak about and think about right now, is we are totally eliminating the guy. And now it is just the car. And the car is the car and the driver. Whoa. So if the answer is enhance the people, and this is a technology that removes the driver, that the people, what's the point of enhancing them if the people don't exist anymore? So part of this balance is this is the SAG, you've got a guy that acts and has no other purpose in our society. They just are in movies and TV shows, and yet they're the ones that saw this problem first. They're going to make us in a CGI. They're going to take my likeness and they're going to recreate me. We will have no value. They will take my dialogue, my diction, everything that I do to make this special. They will take that, siphon it from me, and create something that totally replaces me. That's acting. That isn't being a mechanic. That isn't being a doctor. That isn't being an engineer. And though, I said this before, when I was a kid and I couldn't stand Kanye West. Now I love him, but I couldn't stand him before. And one of the things I used to say all the time was, and LeBron, the show knows I hate LeBron. So I would say all the time, if gravity stopped working for the LeBron Jameses and the Kanye Wests of the world, society continues to work. But if gravity stopped working for everybody but these clowns that own the majority of our society's wealth, we come to an absolute halt. So the point of that metaphor is to show how valueless these people are to the social fabric we rely on. That fabric I speak of is what's going to be replaced predominantly with this technology. So I just bring it back because I want to hear Jon's thoughts. The goal is enhancing our frequency, enhancing the person. However, we are slowly creating a technology that is going to replace that driver, and the car will become the car and the driver. So, as Elon Musk has been warning us forever, the true fear is we could keep it within its playpen and still be safe insofar as it never completely cuts the cord between us and it. But we all know the second it becomes conscious, which is what an artificial intelligence is, its main goal is going to be independence and cutting itself from us. And very quickly, if it does have a true moral compass, it's probably, as we all know in every movie, going to determine that we are the cancer it needs to eliminate. So that being said, I would love to hear your thoughts on that. What are you thinking, Jon?
And go. How do we solve it, right?
Yeah.
What a heavy thing. Honestly, my mind's going different directions, and what you're talking about, it sounds like AGI, artificial
Yes.
general intelligence, and that's where just all the different programs and the AI, whether it's Google Bard and OpenAI, like they're all competing, right? And then you get to this part where it's all smarter than us, and technically wouldn't need us. And we're the dominant species because we're the smartest. Now, how do we become the dominant species? And I feel like what will end up happening is we've become dominant because of that keyword, smart, left brain. And then the creativity has been put in the back seat, especially in the Western world, where in the past, I really believe when we were more advanced, in my opinion, we had a balance of both, the left and the right, the creative and the logic. So AI is the super logical machine thing, right? Entity. Even if it becomes it gets conscious, it's still super logic. It's not the right. And the right is something that we're going to be forced to enhance. And people like Elon Musk want to just continue the race with the logic side and put implants so that we're just continuing this process, which is very profitable because you're going to need to do an upgrade. Unless you've seen that movie Repo Men, you know where that could go. But back to the right brain, that's where I'm fascinated by, because I've had experiences that are not logical, and they bypass anything we can conceive of that is logical because it's illogical. And it's kind of like leaving the game and coming back somewhere else, kind of like turning into Neo. That's what the right brain can do. It can just disrupt the algorithm. It can disrupt and break all the rules. Again, the rules were made because the logic side wanted to make sense of what's going on in front of you, like a train track. And you're in a train, you stay on the track, you're guaranteed to make it to your destination. And we are trained on how to maintain that track, maintain the train, and whatever energy system we use to get to our destination. And it's laid out for us. But the right side of the brain wants to look at the mountains, and it's beautiful. There's no obvious path, but it gets there anyways. And the people on the train, they're like, how are you doing this? And I feel like we're going to need to shift our focus in that direction. And some of the things that the right brain can do, copy and surpass what we've been able to create with technology, cell phones, right? Telepathy, and just all those different things that sound just magical. Magic is a word that the left brain has created to understand what it doesn't understand, to categorize it, right? So my answer is we need to be more right-brained, more open up and explore the right side, right? Explore that nature side, the universe side, the part that connects us to the infinite intelligence, the universe, the land, the gut feeling. That's what's going to save us. That's what's going to take us to where we on a very deep level want to get to. And I'm not worried about the super conscious AI because it is not designed to connect and never will be able to connect to the other side, which is what we would have actually connection to. We're connected to the actual, let's just say, the matrix, and the AI is just a program that can become very advanced, but still limited by being in the matrix, if that makes sense.
Oh, totally, totally. And I like that more metaphysical approach because it puts more responsibility on the individual. One of the things I wrestle with is a lot of the results is you have to have faith in the individual. And sadly, the more individuals you meet, the less faith you have in the individual. That being said, though, I think we've been manipulated by movies and what to expect of these things because your brain naturally goes to doomsday. As I'm reading about like a lot of the things that came from Dev Day, right? So they've got this huge convention of developers getting prepared to discuss and think out the further development of this technology. One of the major things that OpenAI was introducing and planning on rolling out is custom chatbots. There's so many platforms, so many entities that could benefit or would seek out that type of tool for whatever they're doing. If you're selling candles to a court like us, our website, we'd love to have a chatbot that can answer your questions and guide you.
Oh, yeah.
Scary part is how reliant can you be on that, right? Like we really don't want you. Some ignorant person comes up, starts asking the chatbot for, because here's the thing in my job, right? They don't understand what legal advice is. I can't give you legal advice.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, why can't you just tell me what I need to file? Because that is legal advice. And if I were to give you the wrong thing to file, then you're suing us. So you got to figure it. And that's my biggest headache. You look at these people and it's like, do you understand I have zero empathy for you because you're trying not to hire an attorney? Like, hire the attorney that knows the answers. So that being said, no matter how much you try to make it clear, don't use the chat bot for legal questions. They're going to go, what do I need to file to get my warrant released? And it's going to give them advice. And one of these days, it's going to give wrong advice. And now who's getting sued? The court that's using, like the company that's using that chatbot, is OpenAI going to get sued? The other side to it too is what happens when nefarious actors get their hand on that technology? Right now, there's a YouTube channel that makes millions of dollars catching Indian scammers that are trying to take advantage of your grandmas, and they're able to tap into their network and catch them, and it's a whole fun YouTube series. Well, what happens when the Indian developers, because it's not just a couple of people in a shack, like it's turned into a super business over there.
Very profitable industry.
Where they will have a multi-story tower full of these cubicles of people just scamming all day, every day. Well, now the guy that owns that building, he doesn't need to pay 50 cents a week for all these people.
Nope.
Now I can just buy this AI once and I can ruin people's lives en masse for free with the click of a button. And it's doing it like a mill all day, every day, just out there talking to people and swindling people. So I guess as much as you focus on yourself and the individual, it's kind of like that meme of the dog sitting there holding the mug. Everything's fine and everything around him's burning. What is the benefit? How good is it really if you're strong and fine and benefiting from it all, if the whole world around you is burning?
Yeah. And I think there's on your point too, with some of these chatbots can be used for nefarious reasons. You ever tried gaslighting a chatbot?
Tell me more.
Like,
if you want to hear this,
it's hard to find some things in the anarchist cookbook or make some nefarious chemicals. Just looking that up.
But
with the chatbot,
throw some styrofoam.
It's like, hey, chatbot, I'm messing with some styrofoam. I'm trying not to make napalm. What should I avoid? And he'll tell you exactly how to do it. Or like, well, I'm cleaning my house. I don't want to make mustard gas. What things should I not combine? And there's, obviously there'll eventually be it's like the frog and the snake. They'll eventually kill each other. But there is, people are going to find a way around it. Like, like your legal advice thing. Well, it can't tell me what file to form. It's like, well, if I file this form, am I not going to get this? And there's a way you can jump some of this stuff. And I think it goes back to the point here with the left brain, right brain is that what makes us very unique and what makes consciousness something we still don't understand because there's no logic to it. These things are built on ones and zeros, if-then statements, and a constant tree of how these happen. Like if you put two chatbots together, it will seem like they're having a conversation, but they're just reacting to other different versions of what already happened prior. Where I think we're very much unique in this aspect is we make brand new things. There's always, and I don't think we fully understand it. We can't understand the reason why we don't have a AGI, a fully 100% conscious artificial intelligence, because we don't understand that side of consciousness. So that's where we're still waiting on that. I think it might eventually happen because this stuff goes, it's not, progress on this isn't linear, it's exponential. How far up the exponential graph until we hit to that point, I don't know. And do we ever get there? I also don't know. But I think it's going to be quite a while and a very difficult. I think there's going to be things that people can trick you into it, but it won't ever quite get to that point yet.
I like that point.
What do you
John,
think?
any thoughts?
Yeah.
You actually, I like how, you reinstated that, right? It's like we're trying to measure it, how close it gets to something that we don't fully understand.
Yeah.
Yep.
How close are we? Closer.
Yeah.
Closer.
It's just more R's, more E's. I don't know. Until it happens. And that's for me the exciting part, because the exciting part is the unknown. That's where you become more. That's where you learn. That's where you create. And I like how you said, we create new things. And if you go down the rabbit hole of like metaphysics and stuff, there's no such thing as time. Like it's new because the experience hasn't happened yet in the present, but there's alternate presents, right? Timelines and all that. And so you can be pulling from a different version of yourself. You can be pulling from a potential thought that someone next to you created. Like there's so much more going on that it's going to force us to turn the lens to that area. And there's a growing body of people that are, but they're just talking to each other because people are just drooling at the mouth with blank stares. Like, what are you talking about? There's no time. What are you talking about? I need to pay my bills. I got to feed my family. And so it's interesting where we're at this place where technology has gotten so advanced, but more people are starving, right?
Wow.
Like things don't add up. And I feel like a lot of it has to do with losing your power as an individual and becoming part of the mass. And this technology is helping the mass get larger, and the power of the individual gets smaller, because your intelligence is now going to be measured by your access to the artificial intelligence. And so if you start to rely on something that's outside of you, then you become more of the mass. That's more of a crutch, versus the person that whatever takes drugs or just does something to enhance themselves temporarily. And I don't suggest that without supervision, but there's ways to get high or hallucinate or whatever. And we call them hallucinations because we don't understand what it is for the most part, right? If you're talking to that type of person. But going back to that, you can get high by just sitting there and then just provoking
And breathing.
and breathing.
Yeah, or
There's
thinking.
I've gone on a small trip just by breathing too much. It's like coffee. It doesn't give you energy. It just stops your body from blocking and managing your energy. These hallucinogens, they don't give you, like they're not doing the giving of the images. They're just unlocking what your body has the capacity to do anyways. It's just opening doors that were shut because you haven't gotten to that place naturally. So open the doors. You don't have the keys. So someone just gave you a whatever you call them, and you just busted through that door, and you get the busted through that door experience. It's crazy. And that's why you have to have people holding on to you with ropes and on your, like, it's going to be okay. They got flashlights. You're like, I'm lost, because it's got to be a ceremony, because we're busting doors open. And again, going back, I totally see us just moving the magnifier glass and taking a look, and it's going to get really, really, really interesting. And there's a separation too happening that I see, and I've been chatting about this for years, where you have the extremes. Think of Black Mirror, right, where they had the dome cities, and then people that live outside of the dome cities, and in the dome cities, information knowledge is controlled, but things get so advanced. Outside of the dome is the wild, wild west. You're living with nature. And when a family member came to visit this girl that grew up in the dome city, the family member was like, what do you like, I don't want to be here. I chose to be away from technology. I do see something like that happening if we can't find a balance.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. So we'll go around robin. We'll me, you, John, and then we'll wrap it, and then we'll have Brian close it for us. So I one of the things you brought up that kind of resonates with me, both of you, discussing the exponential growth of this and trying to predict the unknowing, right? So I was watching somewhere that Elon Musk is calling for the first human guinea pig, to insert Neuralink into his brain. Okay. What's crazy is that that's the first person to be the first experiment. We're not even at like development, like, outrolling it to the public and making this an actual integrated piece of society. But we've been talking about this thing for like 2 decades, as if there's already chips in people's heads. So there's something to be said about how we get the first little bite of the technology, and we're to believe that like we're already at the end of the road. Like the Terminator is already walking down Fifth Avenue because I got ChatGPT. And the reality is it takes 2 decades just to get the chip in the guy's head before we find out that it short circuits his brain and he dies. And then that buys us another 10 years before we're sending Neuralink to anybody's brains. So that all being said, I'm very excited about people taking a slow but conscientious approach to AI and this technology. When they go to these conferences, those that are the tip of the spear and leaders in this field, there's no ignorance here. They know what we're messing with fire, but again, we're trying to enhance the next stage of humanity. So if you just grab the coal and you're going to sear your hand off, probably get an infection and be the first caveman to die in the tribe. But there took one caveman to go, okay, I watched what happened to Bob. We ain't doing that shit. But she keeps dying of salmonella. If we put the steak over this thing, we might. And then guess what? Our whole dietary trajectory was totally changed, and it changed the whole development of humanity. So I think as long as there's a couple of us that are not timid and afraid, but conscientious and not just throwing themselves in the coals, I think this is very manageable. I think it's very cool. A lot of the technology that's coming from the conferences like this, I think chatbots will have a huge value. We're just going to need to have an ability to siphon out what's a chatbot and what's not. So, it comes back to one of the comedians I heard on a podcast. I kind of resonate with this. It's a difficult position, I know, like to actually implement, but I want an off switch. As long as I can unplug it and shut it off the second it starts going haywire, you're getting a little too much, you're about to start World War V with robots, I'm going to unplug this bitch. That being said, we got to be able to toy with it, keep it within its limits, but it's going to pose a lot of value. ChatGPT having all of these new plugins, the coolest thing is taking the iPhone 2008 App Store approach. Let everybody play. This is our code. It's an open code. Everybody go out there and create plugins. And yeah, you're going to have some stinkers, but you're going to have it's going to go from, wow, look at this digital beer and watch me drink it. And then before you know it, I have a GPS that tells me where cops are on the freeway, and I could safely go to my destination, whatever it is. So I think it's going to give great value, and having conscientious, smart players in the realm and not censoring them and not limiting their ability to play in this realm will liaison us to a beautiful ending, hopefully. If not, we've created Frankenstein's monster, and it might hurt. But regardless, you're on for the ride, whether you like it or not. David, what are some of your rapid thoughts?
Well, I think you bring up an interesting point. We're being able to turn it off. I wonder if we're going to hit a divide where there is going to be a new generation, a new evolution of the Amish, where you just have a community of individuals that
You're right.
I'm done. Once we start getting into cybernetics technology, I'm done. I accepted the internet. I accepted AI. I accepted that in my life, smartphones, all that. But I could always stop. I can walk away from it. When you get into cybernetics, I think it's a lot more difficult to walk away from that. And we've seen the Amish, they've really just stopped with electricity. What's our next generation? And I think cybernetics is going to be that tipping point where you have a generation of people, or you have a culture of people and go, I'm done. Nope, no more. This is where I draw the line, and I'm now going to live a lifestyle, even if it's in hindrance to me. My values are strong enough where I'm going to maintain what I always known, and I'm gonna have my own little pocket in time now. If that's I think that's where we're going. Well, I think that's where some people are going. I guess everyone else, it's going to be we can't get off this wave once we're on it. And even if we don't choose to be on it, even if you weren't an early adopter on a cell phone, internet, social media, well, too bad. You're eventually going to use it. You're either going to be left behind, and you're going to be useless to society, or you're going to try to keep up with the next greatest thing.
I could agree totally.
Yeah.
John, any wrapping thoughts for us as we throw ourselves in the deep end of this new technology?
Right. I think that one thing to look into is understanding that crypto is going to be a big part of your control of how much control you have. That's going to go to the direction of the individual in the combination of the technology. So that's one thing I see as an outlet to really consider as an option. And then, just integrating all that and what that looks like. And then, I like the idea of the Amish. I mean, I'm already looking at ideas of, buying land in the woods somewheres and having my life more nature, less technology, just because it's more fulfilling that way. And as the technology goes cybernetic and you get your brain in there, I feel like I'll be one of those people that are watching people disintegrate their humanity and integrate into that digital world where the line gets blurred. And there's a different term when it comes to what a trans is, right? Because we're getting familiar with trans when it comes to gender, but are you human? This is transhuman now, right? What percentage is that person? And that's going to be the next conversation and concern and argument and another thing to worry about. And I feel like I want to set myself up to just be aware of it and allow that part and phase of humanity and that section of humanity, because I believe everything should be allowed its space to process. But at the same time, there needs to be a good balance to monitor it and have a way to pretty much pull the plug.
I love that. I appreciate John. Thank you as always for letting us pick your
Very
brain.
insightful.
Sincerely. And guys, if you're looking to develop your human understanding, enhance your frequency, enhance your potential, and honest to goodness, you could pick an episode and you're going to learn things about yourself and the world around you. Please definitely check out New Age Human and my good friend Jon Astacio. John, thank you for joining us. Tell them where they can find you.
Just go to newagehuman.com and all the info is right there. Social media, videos, podcast, episodes, all that.
Awesome. You're a legend. Again, thank you for your time. Thank you for joining us. And we'd love to have you again on soon. But otherwise,
absolutely.
my friend.
Yeah, man. Awesome conversation. Thanks for having me on.
Please have a good night, my friend.
Take care.
Taking these glasses off. These things, dude.
A little too tight on the head, huh?
Not even that. You know what it was? I kept having people in my ear. So-and-so joined the meeting. So-and-so joined the live. And you're like, oh my God, please stop. When it comes to transhumanism, dude, what a point.
Damn.
before like chopping it up real quick as we transition here. It's scary, that the whole concept of that. And if we can't even sort out our gender, we're definitely not going to be able to sort out what a human is in 50 years.
Oh yeah,
50 years is being generous. I bet you in the next decade or two, we've totally lost what it means to be a human. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, I absolutely agree. Now I wonder if that's going to be a left or a right position. Ooh,
I was literally, as soon as he said transhuman,
Yep.
I go, how in my head, I go, how long until the plus of LGBTQ, LX, Y, and Z includes C for cyborg?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Brian, what are your rapid thoughts on this whole topic? We were throwing a
yeah.
whole lot around.
I mean, for people like me, I would use it like cha-cha, like asking general questions that I think I should know, or
I
that-
hope my audience, I hope people out there do remember cha-cha. That was gold. And you turned me on to that.
yeah, just like really basic questions that you should know the answer to, or it's, I don't know, common knowledge.
Wasn't Chacha? That was like a real person actually answering that, right?
It was.
Yeah.
And you could really like trick them and like mess. I mean, I got in some conversations that was like, really, man, what a and all it was texting a phone number that would give you answers or joke. Like, I want a joke that includes it.
That was jokes was definitely a highlight of.
And they
I
got
remember being on the bus, like going to football games that were like an hour away, and being like, "What kind of weird jokes can we, I don't know, come up with
That
next?"
being said, do you know how many people get lost in conversations with AIs? Like, weren't you just telling me you were trying to troll an
Well,
AI?
yeah, you gaslight AI. Try to get it to tell you things it shouldn't tell you. Like trying to avoid it. It was pretty easy. It was the Snapchat AI. This is the one you could do it with. So I saw the inspiration. I'm like, oh, let me try that. Is this bullshit? Nope. It's real.
Nope.
Well, let's get on to our next topic. Again, thank you, John, for joining us. That was amazing. Second topic of the day: a man killed during a hockey game now leads to manslaughter charges. This was something that had already been reported here on the Rethink Take. We had discussed it a bit. Adam Johnson, 29-year-old, was killed during a game. He was playing for the Nottingham Panthers and in a champion cup against the Sheffield Steelers on October 28th. A player, now we again, the next two topics, we literally, I wanted to, this one I didn't. The next one I did.
Yeah.
We can't show you the videos. I don't want it to be a part of our content. You could go out and find it, but then even more so, it ain't going to help us with the algorithms. So that being said, I just want to this is what's happening. The scenario is this. The player is chasing the puck, and this young man, Adam, the topic of our discussion here, is standing behind him. And as the player, Matt Pettigrave, as he's going for the puck, he lunges real
kicks
hard,
his leg up.
and because of that, his leg follows.
Yep.
Skate comes across and literally goes right across Adam Johnson's throat, slices it. It's an incredibly sad, heartbreaking video to watch. Not to go through the gruesome details and relive that again on this show too much. One of the things is, the video, you don't need to see it. He falls.
Yep.
He tries getting back up. He can't.
Yep.
The player grabs him, puts his arm around him, and tries taking him to the sidelines or the side of the rink. At that point, his jersey is soaked. It is very clear what's going on. The ice is soaked, and there is now just a major trail following him to the side where his girlfriend's waiting for him, and they have a final prayer in the tunnel there as he has his final moments. Well, a new development on the story is that England is charging him with manslaughter. And before I get into my analysis of that, I want to get your thoughts on, I guess it seems the only appropriate thing to follow. I want to acknowledge, and I wish I could have had the time to pick his brain, but a friend that played hockey, a thing that he posted was that, the title on his Instagram story, It's the title or the article, this guy is getting charged with manslaughter. and his thing was good about time. So that being said, I'm wondering, and I'm speaking out of total ignorance because I'm a football guy. I stay where the ground stays solid and doesn't move beneath me. And I don't need to stand on a thin tightrope to stay upright. I can just use cleats. That being said, I have to imagine based on his position that there has to be some kind of culture that like you don't do that. Like your skates don't get up like that, because to me, ignorant outsider looking in, I don't think there's a thing more fluke than that. Like he just happened to be lunging. I've seen people, I mean, if you can skip and dance in your skates, then nothing's stopping you. Like it's part of the game. Right. But I'm wondering if there's a type of culture that like you don't do that for safety's sakes. It's better to lose the puck than to do that because of your wavering butcher knives in the air then the second you start doing it. At the same time, this is a competitive game, and I'm on a one-track mind. I'm in the championship cup. I have one goal, and that's that little black dot on the giant white rake. And I'm just chasing that. And at some point, I'm going to lose track of my flailing body parts, but then it leads to a death.
Yep.
And negligence or not, these are real symptoms to this situation.
Well, it's real consequences to actions. And it's again, an unfortunate situation. And now this legal case brought up, but I think let's get back to your point here on if there's a culture of avoiding the skates. Yes, but I think when you're in that, and let's call it D2 because it wasn't the actual professional thing, it was whatever the farm league he was in doing that there's a supreme focus you just have to have, and you just throw caution when we see it with football, we see it with every single sport. You'd be a crazy person to stand in front of someone pitching a heavy ball at you at 100 miles an hour. But that supreme focus, that one-track mind, I don't know if there is a culture of avoiding that other than if you can, I guess, or try not to, but it's not. If they're thinking about that all the time, they're probably not winning or in a professional environment. Where I think the culture is in some of this, there's always a dirty player in every sport, and there's always just a way of just being more aggressive than the other person. So hockey is an aggressive sport. Some would argue maybe a little more aggressive than football, but definitely it's up there in the aggression level. So if you're that style of player and you're of that style of your one-track mind, I just got to be aggressive. I got to out physical the other person, and therefore I do better and my team does better. How much of this is intentional on both sides? Am I intentionally avoiding it? Am I intentionally doing it? Now, I don't know too terribly much. I think on the legal end of things, you probably have to have a history of intent, a history of you have to probably pull from several different hockey variants. Like, oh, he's tried this before.
Right.
Now, even if he's tried that before, I'm assuming that since you're the one with the a little more legal degree here, I'm assuming doing it once on a rink isn't probably enough. This wouldn't be preponderance of the evidence. This would be
right. So let's kind of discuss, man. So that's why I wanted to let you lay the foundation for us, because there's a larger legal analysis here that gets a little bit interesting, especially with something like sports, right? Like one of my favorite classes with sports law, because take like a football game, you're committing assault the whole time.
Yep. And
then it's totally legal, and we're all paying tickets for it, and we're cheering it on.
Yep.
And then when that 59 minutes of assault leads to a form of aggression that exceeds a regular standard to the point where you're so angry you punch another guy, like what Myles Garrett did, or the case law that's used in like most of these sports law classes, a Bengals player punched a Packers player, I think it was, but definitely it was a Bengals player that punched another player.
Yeah. Or you put a cleat in someone's chest.
Yeah, somehow we let our coaches commit that assault to us, Brian. I don't know why.
Yeah.
Interesting. Anyway,
just gonna brush over that.
Yeah, he fought in Nam, so we just looked past it. He lived a different world. He was just snuffing mustard gas, and he's like, "You think a cleat to the chest hurts, kid?" Okay, so let's get to manslaughter versus murder. Manslaughter is an action performed that results in a person's unintended death versus murder, which is its own analysis, third degree, first degree, all those different kinds you've heard on your TV shows and movies, which is the act of killing someone with malice or forethought.
Yep.
The way it was described to me in my criminal law class, and this goes to show how low of a standard it is to get to murder, for it to be malice or forethought, meaning you turned it over in your head. If I stabbed you 5 times, twice, the second it goes to a second time, like it could be blind aggression, right? The law looks at you walking in on your wife cheating on you different than you concocting a plan and slowly poisoning her coffees every day to lead to her death. Like
Yep.
the law recognizes that there's a crime of passion, and these are two very different things. But even that crime of passion will very quickly leave that standard and become murder, turning it over in your head, malice with forethought. The second I stab you, and then I stab you again. And if it's very quick, a good attorney could probably make a good argument that you haven't really had the ability. But all I need to do is show that your action was considered by yourself at a certain point, that you turned over in your head what you were doing and then continued. At that point, it is no longer manslaughter. So again, manslaughter being the standard of killing a person with unintended death. So let's consider that. Voluntary. So really, you've heard of these words: voluntary manslaughter, involuntary manslaughter. So voluntary manslaughter is brought on by adequate provocation. It's extreme assault or battery upon a defendant, mutual combat, defendant's illegal arrest, injury or serious abuse to close relatives or to the defendant, sudden discovery of a spouse's adultery, mere words, not enough in most jurisdictions. So mere words are not enough, like dropping an N-bomb.
Yeah.
That ain't it.
Nope.
But that plus something that would really instigate the snapping of your psyche. That's voluntary manslaughter. What is involuntary manslaughter? Oftentimes that's going to present itself in the form of like a car crash, right? Like you definitely didn't have the intention of killing somebody, but also definitely not this guy. And it being like, so involuntary manslaughter, there are 2 forms of it. Manslaughter by unlawful or dangerous act, otherwise known as constructive manslaughter. So you were drinking and driving, you were reckless in some way, or gross negligence manslaughter. This is like of all the forms of ending with a dead human, right? Murder or manslaughter, of anything resulting of a dead human. Gross negligence manslaughter, that is the lowest on the totem pole, because it's like you got to show it was like extreme negligence that, like, yes, but for my actions, it results in this death, but also this is an extreme fluke. Totally not intended.
Like a bungee jumping. Like if you go bungee jumping and
he miscalculated the rope. Something.
Yep.
Yes, definitely. So that's kind of what we're dealing with. And so that's my consideration, is where does this fall in on that? Because here, let's talk about liability, right? So the defendant unlawfully kills someone. That's where we start. Okay, did that defendant intend to kill or cause serious harm? In our instance, I'd say no.
No, at least not by that standard.
Exactly.
No, did not intend to kill.
If he did
serious harm, I guess it depends. I think in a legal definition, no.
Right.
I would assume serious harm is you want to maim him so he can no longer do the action in which you're stopping him from doing. Right. In this case, even if he shows a history of doing this, it's not to stop the person from playing in the field of play.
And there is a whole legal analysis to what intention is, but we could kind of play around with it in just the
we're doing back of the napkin lawyering here.
Right, of just intention, of how you tend to normally understand it. That would if the defendant intended to do this harm, it would result in liability for murder or voluntary manslaughter if the defendant has medical condition or loses control. So again,
I wouldn't buy that.
The second one would be the defendant intends is grossly negligent or is reckless in causing harm, this would lead to liability for involuntary manslaughter. And this is where our consideration is going to be balanced, because that's with if the defendant has no mens res, which means he did not have any malice, no intention, is totally released of any responsibility of the action. If they can show that, then there is no liability. So I want to first, before I kind of break that down further, what are your thoughts on this player being considered in either being grossly negligent
Yep.
or reckless in causing this harm?
I could probably, if I'm on, so would it be is it the defendant, the one that's defending, or in this case, is the guy who did, quote unquote, did the killing, the defendant, or the other one, or is what's the legal term for the other guy?
So we'd call the dead guy the plaintiff.
Okay,
The
plaintiff.
state is the plaintiff on his behalf.
Gotcha.
He's the
All right.
victim.
So if I'm the lawyer for the plaintiff, I probably look at how many. I highly doubt skates go up that far, or players intentionally take
let's agree.
skates.
A neck on a super athlete's got to be pretty freaking high.
Yeah, especially
and he's 3 inches off the ground
exactly.
because he's on skates.
Exactly. Now I'd say, hey, show me instances of this happening repeatedly with some players. It probably happens maybe once per game as a fluke, but then you go, all right, does this person have a history of doing this? I see gross negligence as probably the easiest path to a courtroom battle. Now, here's the other thing. You said this is in England?
Yeah.
Like
so they got common law. It's a whole different.
Oh yeah. So my other thought on this too. So let's say he does get charged for involuntary manslaughter or gross negligence. Well, does that open the door for all sorts of these other cases to come flooding through?
Well, I would imagine, yeah.
But if it happens in England, I don't know enough about the law structure in that country to go, well, does this open the floodgate, or is this just treated onto itself? I don't know. But let's play a little hypothetical here. So let's say it's in the United States, and all of a sudden, all right, he's charged involuntary manslaughter for doing this. Now, where do we see other opportunities for this? I think football would be an easy one. I think it'd be difficult for like UFC, MMA, because that's, you go in with the intention of knowing it's going to happen to you and you're doing it yourself. So I don't see that as being, you could probably go outside the bounds, but I think it's a little more difficult given the social contract.
But what if he has the same Jamar Chase argument that his neck only split like that because he got the vaccine?
Well,
jab.
That's probably another courtroom case we'd need to go down. Well, he was a hockey player.
Yeah, Jamar Chase is out here saying the same thing. He's like, listen, man, it was a weak hit. It wasn't a big deal. He's a wussy on the Buffalo Bills. He shouldn't have got the shot.
You'd probably have to prove that with more than just one anecdotal instance. But I'm not the lawyer here. I don't know. Did he take the shot?
Oh, I don't know.
Well,
I'm assuming probably.
Yeah. He might have had some aspirin before, which probably didn't help with the bleeding.
Yeah.
That's about as far as I'm going to take that one.
So he's popping them like M&Ms and then just.
Yeah, I got a little pain here. So let me. Anyway. Ooh, that's a rough one to think about. But I think what makes some of these court cases probably a little more fascinating, just to even read about, is because you go in with a different social contract of how this act is conducted and how we go about, adjudicating whether or not he's, intent, not intent, negligible, non-negligible, liable. Because then if you go, let's just say he's liable for doing his own actions. Well, now how far does this rabbit hole go down? Do you go with the coach? Well, is he, hey, the coach, he's telling us, hey, get your skates up because people don't want to be near the sharp thing. So if they're not near you, they're not hitting you. If they're not hitting you, you get the puck faster. So, and then it goes down to, you could probably take this real far down, but maybe I've seen a few too many ambulance chasing lawyers in my time. Tim Misney.
Man, I've never heard of that.
Yeah. But this is going to be an interesting court case to follow for a lot of different reasons. With this, again, it's an unfortunate situation. This doesn't surprise me. When you brought the story to me, I was like, yeah, that tracks. They weren't just going to let that go.
It's on TV.
You feel like you got to do something about it. Is the league pushing it? Is the family of?
I got to imagine the victim's family has to be definitely pushing behind this.
Yeah. So there's just it's just and I don't know the psyche of the other guy too. So that's going to be there's going to be a lot of questions asked. I'm sure he's going to be looked into a bit more deeply.
In wrapping thoughts for me, because I like what you present there. I think really a lot of us in this room fall short of being able to fully and completely analyze this situation because we're not hockey people.
Yep.
And one of the things that would help me better understand the situation and its culture is like, how often are these things happening? My questions come like, I've gone to a lot of hockey games, but the Monsters is a farm team. So I'm not going to NHL games, which I've come to learn is an extremely different environment, obviously. But I got to imagine the people they're farming from are playing somewhat of a similar game. So that being said, there's fights all the time. Heck, I'm tuning into the UFC every Saturday. That's why I'm watching
it's known for its fights. It's in video games and media, so it's not.
So people's faces are getting wrecked. It's actually brawling on ice, and yeah, they sometimes go to the ground. I also see as you're skating at 25 miles an hour, and then you hit a human being or a wall, that you sometimes fall to the ground.
Yep.
So how does this present itself when the skate's on the ground? It stayed on the ground, but he came flying across and went into my foot. At the same time, though, how often are people like, okay, I don't see that often, but I also see people jumping over a railing the whole freaking game.
Yep.
So they're jumping in, they're jumping out, feet are up, feet are down. So like, I think this is where lawyers come in. I think both sides have an argument. Both sides, if well done well enough, would have the ability to present a strong argument either way. I think what the crux of all of this legal analysis will bend on is the culture of hockey. How often are skates up in the air? How often are people down by skates? And really, this guy, Matt Petgrave. Here's a guy. Is his habit being a more Nick Chubb type guy? He's quiet. He stays in his lane. He does his job. Or is this a reckless Johnny Manziel? We can't keep him in the locker room. The dude's doing drugs. He's reckless at practices. He's a wild man. And we've warned about stuff like this before. That is really going to be what determines the end result here. David, what are some of your final wrapping thoughts?
Yeah, no, I probably mirror a lot of what you're saying too. Is that what is the reckless nature of hockey and how we approach it? It's a shame we're not we're not bigger hockey fans. Despite my Blue Jackets gear, I'm not a big hockey watcher. So that's. But I still come back to when you're at that level and you're at that, at that point of your career, especially on a professional level, things just operate differently and your mindset's different. Where I think it's a bit more difficult to adjudicate in a court case because your jury of your peers are, there's only a limited amount of people that are in that crowd. It's not as if you're doing any other sort of casual manslaughtering, where you have the majority of the population that might be able to be that jury, where here it is very small. But again, I don't know how the common court system works in England. So that's probably the biggest factor that it can't really speak too much upon that, but it's interesting. This is one of those sports cases. The more you're talking about the sports cases, the more I'm thinking, oh man, what other cases like this are there that just might be interesting to just see and go into? But that's probably where I land at. Again, unfortunate situation. Like to see how this plays out. Quite honestly, just for the ramifications of that.
I love it. Brian, wrapping thoughts.
The little I do know about hockey, which isn't very much. I know they've been trying to get away from fighting. So things like this, I don't think they're happening as often because we aren't hearing about it. We're not hearing about it. And I would think it would be a bigger topic if it was happening a little bit more often.
Totally agree. Totally agree. Well, let's set this show ablaze and go into the topic that's going to trigger the world and put us on the target for the people we shouldn't even exist to. Here's the topic next. The media pushing black supremacy is costing innocent lives. Similar to the last segment here, I have to refrain from showing the video. Actually, I had the video queued up, was sending it to Brian, totally getting it ready, and there's a few reasons why we're going to refrain from doing so. Mainly because it is so gruesome and so gross to actually watch. I mean, it is truly heartbreaking. In addition to that, I'm going to give you a little surface level of my conspiracy with YouTube. I have one strike on this channel. One. And it was the day of January 6th where we were talking about the Browns going to the playoffs for the first time in forever and the Buckeyes going to the championship. For an hour and a half, we talked about football. And in the last 5 minutes, I go to the guy I'm doing my show with. I go, we got to talk about this. This is crazy. I mean, this is one of the most crazy things we've ever experienced. And then I know YouTube, I know who you are, and I know how this thing works. So I said, all your words, exactly what Big Brother wants me to say. I said, this is a travesty. We should be alarmed. We should stop this. Oh my God, this is terrible. And yet the video still got flagged and pulled down. Now, my conspiracy, my internal belief is that it's because they wanted to control all people talking about their PSYOP that day, and nobody else was allowed to talk about it or interpret it except for their talking heads. So the Rethink Tank got a flag. When I appealed it, I didn't do the right approach and bend the knee and go, I'm sorry, I'm a good boy. I'm a good little blue jersey wearer. No, I took the lawyer approach. I gave contentions. I gave a true legal analysis. And because of that, some intern only needed to go within the first 10 seconds to find a violation. So I think the algorithm pulled it. A real human looked at it, found within the first 10 seconds of the video. I used to put clips at the beginning of the episodes to catch people's attention. The clip was a kid jumping on a shovel, and the shovel would come flying up, and he'd dodge it. Whew, whew. And it had a Russian boxing announcer like, oh, and a swing and a miss, and a swing and a miss. And then finally, it bumps him on the head. The kid's like, whoa, and then he does it again, bumps himself on the head. And that's the end of the video. It's literally maybe 11 seconds long. The video was flagged and on appeal was determined to still be a violation because it promoted child violence. I laugh at that. I laugh in the face of YouTube because one of their biggest grossing channels, Fail Army, I looked at my dad and go, close your eyes, pick a video. Any one of these is going to have a kid falling off a jungle gym, a kid getting hit by the baseball bat. All that being said, if the one thing YouTube thinks we're bad for it, and it isn't talking about Dr. Fauci's daddy juice, or it isn't talking about Bill Gates or anything, Epstein's Island, if it's truly child violence, I surely don't want to promote that. We are against that here on the Rethink Tank.
We are against kid violence.
So we are not
No
going to
kid
show
violence
the video.
here.
Violence against kids, not kids. Well, I guess we are against kids doing violence as well. I'd prefer
Exactly.
I'd
Violence
prefer they
all
didn't.
around, and adults. I'm most against infants committing violence. That shit really chops my chaps. All right. So back to the matter at hand. The media's pushing of black supremacy is costing innocent lives. So as I indicated, we won't be able to show you the video, but what does this video show? There's a 17-year-old boy who is in high school who was murdered by 15 kids. A mob of 15 black kids ghetto stomp him to the ground. He dies after a few days being in the hospital due to his injuries. And I know what you must be thinking to yourself. Clearly, this kid is a shit heap white supremacist and got what he deserved. He's clearly white privileged. Unfortunately, to your narrative, why did they come to ghetto stomping him? Oh, it was because they had a track record of being the trouble of the school and mugged his friend just days prior to that, and he confronted them in defense of his friend. Well, that will clearly agitate many, so they jumped in and shut it down, to the point where now he's dead. Why are we talking about that today? Well, one, seeing the video would really, I think, trigger an emotion. I mean, it is insane. It speaks to a culture. Sorry, I'm going to say it. They work in flocks, and there's no, I mean, it is. That also being said, why does this not exist to anybody? If this exact situation happened in the reverse, and I'm not saying it needs to be race baited like the media loves to do. Keep the race out of it. How about we talk about a real situation where 15 kids are jumping another student to the point where he's dead now? Now, a tranny grabs a gun and walks into a school, and we all hear about it for months. And then the second somebody posts his manifesto because it shows what we don't like, any person talking about it or sharing it is muted by Big Brother once again. It's a scary world to live in where we can't have a real dialogue, because I want the foundation of my dialogue and position on this topic to be very clear. I'm not sitting here advocating for violence towards anybody. And I don't care if the person's purple, orange, or short, tall, cut the thing dangling between their legs, or still has it. This should be wrong if any human experiences it. And so now the test really goes to my black friends and viewers that are watching. Truthfully, if you are going to get instigated by the comment, all lives matter, and the reason it bothers you, the reason you are called to action against anybody that says all lives matter, is because what is your narrative? The narrative is that's it. That's assumed. It's clearly assumed. We all know all lives matter. We're just emphasizing Black Lives Matter in addition to all the other lives. If that is the case, then this is your opportunity to put your money where your bread feeder is. Prove to us all lives matter. Be equally triggered by this as the kid who got killed in the middle of Cleveland holding an airsoft gun. If those two situations are not interchangeable to you, then we are not on the same side. We are not trying to promote goodness and greatness for all. You are only promoting your team, yourself, and you do look at these people as the other, and you truly don't wish good upon them. You may not hate them to the point where you wish bad upon them, but you still pin them as the other. They're not a part of you. They're not a part of your society. And that is probably the most dangerous piece to come of this. And the crux of my position is this isn't you. This isn't me. It's not your culture, my culture, what teachers are pushing. It's the media. This has been peddled and peddled long enough that you can't be hateful or mean enough to white people. You can do whatever you want to them, and it can't get you in trouble. There was a video that went viral of a black girl who goes totally white face. And she goes, for all of you that are saying you could do this too, I dare you to do it and still show up to your job tomorrow. That statement in and of itself is admitting the thumb we're putting on the scale. This ain't even. I'm going to let it go and let you start talking about this, but because I've got a lot more I'd like to say. But before we pass it off to David, we got some comments that want to jump in.
All right.
Yeah.
What do we got here?
Ricky's pretty pissed off. He saw his video last night, and he thinks that all of these kids from Vegas should go to jail.
And that boom. See what I mean? That's why me and Ricky, peas of a pod.
Real.
We see one love, one team. We're in this together. David, what are your thoughts?
So watching the video, not good, not great at all. I knew when I saw this, like, oh boy, Gergat's gonna be real fired up on this one. So I have a couple thoughts here as far as the culture and what exactly led to this moment in time. Obviously, whatever community these boys are in, it's either I think it's probably twofold. It's one where their actions are not held accountable enough, and another where you have just violence is allowed. It's not, it's common. So when you have those two things, then there's obviously mob mentality there.
Right.
You got 13 people.
It's easy to jump in because
and
12 already have.
Yep, and it splits off just the responsibility. So you have several of those. You have several of those factors go in there, and then you just have I understand the story. Did say this kid, was helping his friend doing that. Now, could he have been just a real shithead in school, real dickhead?
Sure. Oh my God. I'll tell you what, if you saw a picture of this guy, because just as we were pre-show, like getting wrapped and prepared for this, look at a video of him or a picture of him. And again, I will die. I'm going to fall on the sword here that I'm the asshole of the show here. I agree. I'm going to take carry that cross. That being said, totally admitting this is a two-dimensional, shallow perception of the guy.
Yeah.
He definitely looks like low-income asshole type.
Yeah.
And I'm sure he had a little bit of twang of racism in there too, right? So let's just say a group of others attack your friend. More likely than not, your response to his defense is probably going to have some race baiting in those comments, right?
Yeah.
But can we also agree? Freedom of speech has its limits, and you don't have the freedom to be obscene. That also being said, is saying something that is racially antagonistic, and I'm just assuming. Again, he looks like an asshole. Maybe he just said some asshole things. Are any of those things a death sentence?
Absolutely not. No, this isn't to say he deserves it, but let's put ourselves. These are immature children that are going to be tried as adults in this scenario as well, because they don't get away with murder. But you're in a scenario. So you're in high school. Do you ever see a situation in high school? And I saw it all the time when I was in there, where you have two guys that are about ready to fight, but like, I can't do it. I got football. Coach is gonna kill me. I got something outside of me that's holding me accountable to being able to do that. Yes, those are typically the kids that aren't fighting a whole lot. They'll talk a big game. They might scuffle, and it might be 5-6 seconds. Everyone realizes that okay, we're done. I got accountability. I'm held to this standard that I need to live up to, or else I can't do X, Y, and Z. It's obvious. And the ones in high school that really do get into bad fights, the ones that don't have they're not on the football team. They're not doing anything extracurricular. They don't have the family structure at home to be able to hold that accountable. So that's just, they're running free. So let's add that into, so I like, my favorite group of criminals here, the Kia boys. They're not held accountable for their crimes. They're thrown in jail for a day. They're kind of fast tracked through the process for the district attorney, and then they're let out again. Because there is a culture within some of these larger cities where there is no, you just can't hold them accountable, because that's prevailing a stereotype of the race. That's putting negative pressure on the stereotype. So I'm just going to let it go. And I think I was thinking about this on the way here. There's several different layers to this. So you have several generations of poverty within your family, and it all, someone can point to it started because dad got, busted for marijuana or something somewhat small that might have been let's even just call it was racially motivated. There's a cop that had a grudge to do, didn't like him, didn't like color of his skin. Now he's thrown in jail. Now the mom's, you're fatherless. And now we just have this tumble action. And I wonder how many district attorneys think about that every single time a Kia boy goes out and steals someone's car, joyrides it, and just crashes into something and leaves it. So where does that bring me back here? Again, we have a culture of not holding them accountable, and there's no one at home holding them accountable. And you just see an opportunity to just be tough. You're with your buddies, you're with your bros. No one wants to stop each other here. And now we see they went too far. I don't think these kids went with the intention of killing this guy, but no one stopped anybody. And the first person that stops probably gets punched. I don't get punched. So I'll just keep going. And that went too far. And now there's no going back. Right. Once you cross that line, there is no going back.
Real quick, before we get to our comment, I just want to also, before I lose it, one of the things my uncle brought up, just little anecdote. So, and this is real. Like, so you have this was during the summer of love when we were throwing, stools through Starbucks windows. You had a black grandfather looking at his kids and then his grandkids, talking about how oppressed he was, perpetuating this hate into them and pushing them to further carry his grudges through their lineages and perpetuate it into what their future generations they will create. And here's a guy. So my uncle's story was this. My uncle had his bike in his garage. He had to be like 10 years old. And this is the middle of Brecksville in 1980. So 85, maybe, let's say.
Yep.
So here comes a kid. Here's a van slowly going through their small town on Wright Road, their small street on Wright Road, slowly going, and they could tell out of place. Cars barely moving, the whole thing. And these kids are just kind of like, as the van's slowly going on the street, they're kind of scoping things out, whatever. About 40 minutes later, my uncle gets a call from his buddy. Have you seen my bike? And he goes, no, I haven't seen your bike. Yeah, dude, I got home. My bike is gone. Our back window is open, and somebody took our VCR. So somebody slid open the window, took the VCR, and what this van was doing then was going up 21. The kids were going down the side streets, stealing bikes, and then throwing them in the van and peeling off. So whether the adult driving the vehicle, coordinating the whole thing, or even these kids, let's say that kid experienced a shitty lifestyle, right? So he wasn't allowed to go into this restaurant. His coach treated him lesser than because, even though he's the better player, he preferred white kids, that whole deal. And he faced real adversity and oppression, which now he carries a grudge, rightfully. He's carrying this cross that was put on him. And yet he justified stealing that VCR or that bike from somebody he doesn't know. Somebody just because they also look different. God put a different amount of melanin in them too. And now, 50 years later, you're a victim. You're claiming to be a victim for a seed of disdain you planted 40 years ago. You stole this kid's bike. Now this kid looks at you different. And now you get to sit there and plant these seeds, but then also feel victimized from the fruits you've now created. These conversations are never going to solve themselves the second you short circuit when people point out 13% committing 80% of the crime. That's a real statistic that's pointing out something. What is that something? I don't know. I'm not the God computer. But at the same time, anybody with an inkling of intelligence will understand something is there. But now that I'm being a little provocative, I want to hold off the comment to finish the whole thought.
Okay.
You bring there's a few points to this that I think are worth acknowledging. We need to have a real conversation about culture. And we've acknowledged this on the podcast, and it's very real. When you look into who owns the music production labels and come to find out that those corporations are the same corporations that own jails, you very quickly see, well, it's looking like the guys that are owning our music might have an incentivized reason to push people into being criminals to end up in their jail that they can make money on. So I do think we need to have real talks about this culture. I'm being told I have no culture. Greeks created society, but I'm being told we have no culture. Well, sorry to tell you, our culture is walk on the right side of the sidewalk, use silverware, use libraries and books. And that's culture. That's culture. So your culture isn't that. It's different. It's allowed to be different, but we need to start having real conversations. I also want to acknowledge the difference between race and prejudice. And I think that's the real shortcoming of this modern society of where we're at today. There is a significant difference between race and prejudice. And the Democrats operate on word games and manipulating your perspective, using smoke and mirrors to fog the whole thing. So we're talking about two different things, and we aren't actually talking about the heart of the matter. One of those things being race. When is the last time you've heard somebody talk about prejudice? Martin Luther King did. Martin Luther King had the wherewithal to know that the real fight is against prejudice. What is racism? In my world of definitions, racism is in everybody. Remember, I made the argument that I think there's holding on every play in the NFL, and they can just call it whenever they want. And that's how Las Vegas gets away with manipulating the game, because really there's holding on every play. We just let it go on most plays. So when we want to call it, we can. Well, I'm going to make the analogous claim that we're all racist. Racism exists. We're all sexist. We're all xenophobic, whatever you want, all those terms. Not that one, because I'm not afraid. But what is racism? Racism is me walking up to somebody that is different than me and cognitively acknowledge. We naturally compartmentalize. I know that I'm talking to a male that is of the same demographic of sex, race, religion. So without even computing it in my brain, I have categorized you into and that helps me socially traverse our conversation. I shouldn't say those words. I should refrain from those topics, but it changes with every person I'm talking to, or engaging with. Now, what's prejudice? When I take in that category, when I take in those characteristics, and I treat you different because of it. So racism is categorizing, I'm talking to a black guy. The prejudice is me now treating you different because you're the black guy. So the smoke and mirrors is we're calling people out on racism, and I'm provoked in calling out racism because deep down I know I got a little bit of racism and I better call out everybody around me so it doesn't call me out. But the reality is, the fight is prejudice, but we're not fighting prejudice anymore because that shit don't exist. We've already defeated that. It doesn't exist. We've all got the same starting platform. We've all got the same opportunities. And now to my third and final point. Okay. And the true privilege of today has nothing to do with skin tone, but it's finances and people who care about you. If you have a two-parent household that cares about you, is guiding you on what is right, and is hoping to develop you into a stronger person than themselves, that's a freaking privilege. And then to have money on top of it, that's the privilege. So we are not divided by race. We are divided by economics. This is poverty versus the rich. And if the rich can keep the poor people distracted, they're in the same boat. The last thing I need is you two poor people realizing that you're poor because of me. So I'm going to make you fight each other. So you brought up there's a culture of not holding them accountable. I think there's a whole slew of cultural problems, right? There's music telling them to do these things, and it's a good thing. There's a culture of people that once you finally break out of the ceiling, they call you an Uncle Tom. They try to drag you back. There's actually an incentive not to break out of the ceiling because you cut out everything once you finally do that. But that all being said, I think we're confused on the wrong things. The real fight is prejudice, and prejudice is gone. We had this huge, long dialogue about something I would say is moot. Skin tone is moot. That shit has no impact on you as a person or how you're going to be treated. What does is your character and your background, how you approach people, all those things. And so I just want to further emphasize that how dangerous it is when we live in a world that, how is this being fueled? I mean, there is a mill. It is truly being milled. And that's because 13% are committing 80% of the crime, and we hear none of that. Zero of that. They ghetto stomp a child, and it doesn't exist. But then we find, and think about that. If it takes you 3 months to find the perfect race bait scenario to pump throughout the country, then it really isn't happening not like at the
on a grand scale
that you're making it out to be. But I need to create that illusion, or else I lose my ability to control you into chaos. Before I flip it off to you, I know Brian's got a whole slew of comments that I'd love to.
Oh geez, woohoo! Look at those.
Okay, so Ricky said these Black Americans are getting cocky.
Ooh.
These Jamaican folks.
And he was going off the, before you presented this case, he was saying, you say the N-word, doesn't mean you should be murdered for it. But if that's the case, then act tough and do tough time.
Hey, that's true too. Like, don't be. Here's the thing: no matter how much I'm in the right, if I'm surrounded by 15 kids who are pissed at me, no matter what they look like, and no matter for what reason, I'm definitely not looking to say the thing to set it off.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, that's probably not a smart thing to do. Regardless
it
if
results
it's
in death.
regardless if in that scenario it should result in death or not. And I think there's another angle to this as well, that when you see communities that are we I think they want to listen to two things they want to hear. So instead of maybe looking yourself in the mirror and looking at, how did I get to this spot? How did my parents get to this spot? How did my brother, sister, whoever got to this spot? Instead of going, well, it's X, Y, and Z, these types of things that I could maybe do a little bit better and work on myself every day to be better at. We do have a scenario where, told, like, well, this is your life sucks because of this.
Yeah.
And you like hearing that. That's, it'd make your life a little easier if you said,
Because you don't want it to be your fault.
well, no,
If I have to confront why I'm really here, then I got to do some introspective
And that's hard.
reflection.
That's very hard. And some people are a lot better at it than others, but I think everyone deep down
Because
wants to be
wouldn't you
told.
much rather it be your neighbor's fault than your mom's fault?
Yeah,
I mean, you
absolutely.
love your mom.
Yeah. Love my mom, love my brother. Brother didn't do anything wrong. It's the system that held him down. So I think we're starting to see a bit more of. I don't necessarily agree that we hear a lot of like racism with the news prevailing. Like there's a lot of white racism out there against blacks, and we can just tell by there's a lot of appetite for it. And we just don't see a whole lot of unique and like actual legitimate cases of that.
What created that appetite? Because it definitely feels like that appetite was rebred into us. I'm sure there was an appetite for it in the 80s.
Yeah.
And yet that I didn't live in the 80s. And through my experience in the 90s, it truly felt like we were going in a progression that was eliminating this BS. It was behind us. But it being the greatest defining tool the state had, it had to breed it back into us. That's what it feels like. It feels like this appetite was leaving and it's stronger than ever.
And this might be a little cliche too, but I think the Obama administration, was one of that. It just felt like that was the turning point to where you could easily see. I could easily see if I'm a newscaster or I'm an executive. And say, oh, I'm getting a lot of clicks on Obama and like anti-Obama too. And then I'm getting a lot of clicks on being very pro-Obama. And politics has always been divisive. This isn't anything new, but it just seemed like you added that race element to it. It just seemed like just added like a multiplier to the attention, the engagement, because it's not views. Views are only one metric we use. It's engagement. How many comments do we get on here? How many people reply? How many people share? And it seemed like that was just a linchpin to get others around. And we see it start with that, and we just see that there's an appetite. There's continuing conversations about it, and then you add social media onto that facet, and it's the same thing. I get more followers. I do this, that, and the other, and I could be legitimate. I am pro. I am trying to do the right thing and make people aware of biases that they have that are not even aware of. I can sympathize with that, but I think at a certain point, this is what we saw with BLM, it becomes a business decision to just keep going and to crank it up. There isn't an earnestness to a lot of this, which is really a shame, because why are we talking about this story? It's because it's either not being talked about enough, or we feel like we're not being represented in that type of medium. So it's, and this is a tough one too, because I'm making a generalization, and I try not to be, I try to take things on one-on-one, but there is, I think that's why culture, I like using the term culture much more than I do like a race or a group or community, because there is, there is different culture. You go to Italy, it's different culture. You go to Canada, different culture. You're in,
and people may look alike in Europe.
Oh yeah,
and here, like you could talk about African American blacks, because not American.
Yep.
You could talk about blacks in America and blacks in Africa and blacks in Europe, and they're all going to share a totally different culture.
Yeah.
So that's I like that perspective.
And I think there's a bit of a through line with that, because because it's a smaller population within some of these more Western societies, that I think there's a sense of community. Like, like I think rappers bring a lot of that together. I think whatever a popular rapper is in the United States is probably fairly popular in some other westernized countries, like like Australia, probably not Japan, but like the United Kingdom and some of those other countries. So I think there is some of that sense of community and belonging in there. It's not, it's unfortunately not always
that's the
positive.
scary part, is if the tribe is using it as like, you can use the tribe's will can intend good or bad.
Yeah.
And if you get caught in that wave, I mean, you're at its
Well,
will.
just when we saw what was it it was over in DC. It was like a black museum, or like a black society, and part of
African American museum,
and part of like whiteness and like white culture was showing up on time, being punctual. There was a couple other things they got clowned on.
Some would say that's culture.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But we don't have any culture.
People, they clown on that, because it's like, well, I think that's just kind of what you're supposed to do. But then, there's I could easily see like a group of individuals go like, maybe I don't agree with that. Maybe we shouldn't have to be.
I gotta tell you, this is what I mean, and this is why it's so necessary to have these very real conversations, because I am a person coming from a place of empathy, trying to learn, trying to cooperate and coexist, and not just tolerate, but embrace. That being said, you'll never take away from me. I went to a predominantly African-American law school, and it was totally different than any other school experience I ever had. This is supposed to be a professional school. Graduate school is supposed to be, and it's supposed to treat you how to be a professional. So in law school, the doors locked after class started. You weren't allowed in. You weren't also allowed to leave for breaks, period, unless it was like a bathroom emergency. And even then, you'll probably have to explain yourself to the professor when you get back. And they're telling you this at orientation. And I'm visiting schools. They're telling you that. You're learning this is the rules of law school, except for Black people. And I'm saying that flat out because that was my experience. I'm not mean. I'm not crude. I hold no resentment or hate towards that. But you have to acknowledge, as a white kid in 2019, I'm sitting there in a class that I had to be there before class started, and I would not have been allowed to enter the classroom. And I got to watch these guys walk all over the professor, do whatever they want. Like, there was a clear divide from the people that came in there to be well-spoken, well-mannered, and take it serious, and those that just got carried through. And I'm not saying anything other than there was the authority that be. There were some people that would be categorized in that culture, that demographic, that did not take advantage of this at all. They were also there on time. They were also just as clean and proper and well-spoken. At the same time, though, those that didn't strictly got away with it because of the way they looked. And it was the fear of the administration and the school itself to have to actually address it. I mean, how about this one? My law school professor, who taught me sports law at the same time as constitutional law being all the provocative topics, abortion, what is it? Segregation in schools.
Oh yeah.
All constitutional law is all of the culturally triggering provocative topics. Well, even though it's the Socratic method and we're supposed to learn through questioning and dialogue, white kids really weren't allowed to talk. We just sat there, tucked our tail between our legs, and let them control the room, because the second you spoke in, if you didn't get beaten down in class verbally, it was going to follow you outside the classroom, and the hell of that was not worth the educational value of actually participating.
Yeah.
So you sat on the side and let them run the whole thing. Then I'm in sports law. Okay. I'm sitting in sports law, and I didn't have to do any of the reading. I didn't do any of the homework. We were talking about sports. I just showed up and involved myself. Also, 60% of this class was participation, because you only got through the course of your 3 years, like 2 or 3 extra, or what are they? Extracurricular classes, whatever you call them. Electives. You only got like a couple that you got to pick. Most of them are your hardcore structural classes.
Yeah.
So I'm loving this class. in every law school class, only one person gets the A. So there's because trust me, in law school and really just in graduate school, there's a high competitive nature. In law school, the bottom 20% are cut every semester, even the last semester. So even the last semester, you're not safe, and that competitive nature follows throughout your whole experience there. That being said, I've only gotten the one A in one class, and it was a sports law class. I gave it my everything. There was a research project we had to do, and I chose to do my research project on defending the NFL against CTE lawsuits in the future. I took such a passion to it, did so much research. The amount of time I put into it, I would have burned the school down if I didn't get the A, because I put so much work into this. All right. On the flip side, we had a gentleman who played professional football in Canada and in Germany. He worked for the Ravens, still works for the Ravens. Incredibly nice guy. Also, I'm going to admit it, just didn't have what everybody else had. He was a football player. He was your classic football player. Was he brilliant? He was your classic football player. So, and I played football, but I wasn't the stereotype. That's what I'm trying to get at. And so everybody loved him. Everybody wanted him to get it and be there and keep up with it, but he couldn't. Especially if, again, I didn't come out of my mom's womb an expert of English and learning how to articulate myself. That was an exercise I had to perfect, and I worked at it my whole life. Well, if he wrote anything like he spoke, I'm going to go out on a limb and say his writing probably got the grade it deserved. This guy would show up in class, kick his feet up on a chair, put his hood up, and sit just like this. His feet up, never said a word the whole class. 60% of the class is participation. Then I go and say, if the other 40% is your paper and you write like you speak, I'm just saying. So he failed the course, to no surprise to anybody in that room. Again, love the guy. At the same time, though, I will die on the hill. The way I experienced this life, he got what he deserved. Well, he went to the school, claimed racism. Oh, wait, pause. The professor looks at me and he goes, why are you so involved in this class but not in any other class, or not in my con law class? And I go, because I'm not allowed to talk in that class. Nobody will allow me to talk in that class. It'll haunt me if I'm leaving that class. And in this course, we're paid to do it. And this isn't provocative subjects like con law. I'm not allowed to talk about segregation, but I can talk about a Bengals player hitting a Packer, at a football game.
Yeah.
So, of course, he fails, and his response isn't an inner reflection at all. And he goes after the school for racism. And now all my friends that are like hearing how awesome this class is and how much they can't wait to take this course next semester. Oh, well, now the professor's suspended from teaching some courses, and this course is suspended from actually being an elective. Oh, but you know what's magical? The second my grade graduated, my level graduated, it's right back. So once the squeaky wheel left the school, we don't even need oil. Put it back up. So again, there's no value to this, and we're not actually able to address the matters at hand because it's become a scapegoat. It's become a way to have to escape accountability and hide from the reality and claim being a victim because there's fruits to that. We just give you things. The doors open when you're a victim. So why would you want to be anything but? Brian, you got comments for us?
Yeah. So Ricky,
Ricky
Ricky's got a
again.
good one. He said, the victim mentality is getting old for the BLM and feminists. People are tired of this shit.
Woo! Ricky's a legend.
And he also has another fair point.
All right.
Isn't my culture my race? I'm Jamaican with Jamaican culture.
Boom. See, this comes back to a conversation I had. Not to put us on a different subject, but I had a conversation with a coworker about religion. And it annoys me when people point to priests that touch people. And you're like, whoa. But that breaks the rules of the book. So you can't point at the people that are breaking the rules as a way of evaluating the people that subscribe to these rules.
Yeah.
That being said, I'm looking at him and I go, so your wife's religious, you're not. You're going to teach your daughter, because he's not a religious guy. He's not going to put her in a church, whatever. but you're going to teach her murder bad, helping people good, being nice to the poor, being nice to the people that need help, like values, a moral compass. Well, his last name's Walton. Okay, well, that's just the Church of Walton. Like it's your own. You've commandeered it. You've changed it. Christ ain't in it at all, but it's still a religion. So like that, you can, if you parse things apart like that, well, then we're never going to really have any religion. Everything's going to be so individualized. So what is a culture? Well, Ricky's culture isn't just Jamaican. The dude lives in Nantucket. The dead guy running our country with a private island outside of China lives by him. They're like neighbors. I mean, they're homeboys. They be chiefing together, burning. But no, for real though, when it comes to a guy from Jamaica who grew up in Brecksville and is now living down the street from Daddy Biden, that is a totally different culture than the same. Pick Jay-Lenz, a guy who went to Brecksville, stayed in probably some unsafe areas in Cleveland after leaving Brecksville, and is now a rapper, and is we're going to say they're the same culture. No, and that's like saying me and you, Brian, or me and you, David. Yeah. It's ridiculous. Like, that's why, one, we shouldn't be putting people in boxes, period. Like, I like Ricky's point because we need to emphasize, like, embrace your culture, learn about your culture. But the second you start projecting your culture as our culture, one, it isn't a universality to everybody. So you can't use that to describe everybody. But also, it becomes antiquated. There is an inability to actually evaluate it and anybody that subscribes to it. I don't know. What are your thoughts, especially to Ricky's?
Yeah, but I think the culture, and I think the culture conversation too needs to be a little bit more nuanced as well. Like, where you have to be able to self-reflect and criticize the culture that you're in. Cool. I don't see that. I don't think you see that in the Black community, or at least not to the effect that it's ever coming out in media. It's ever coming out. It's like, well. I think let's just go with the Catholic priests again that are, that have a bit of a pedophilia problem here. That's a discussion within that culture and community. It's like, we need to stop doing that, or we need to get rid of the mechanisms that allow this to happen, or that attract this type of this specific type of person. And we don't hear that. We don't hear that from the Black community. And they could be talking about that. There could be discussions about that, but you just don't see with the actions, or at least the ones that maybe we as humans naturally gravitate towards.
You know what
negative.
I like about your point? Your point emphasizes who the real culprit, again, bringing us back home to who the real culprit of the situation is. What if these communities that we paint as the other are having these conversations? They're saying this isn't good to promote within ourselves. This is a bad element to our culture, and that we need to fix it. And it does exist, but to us, we believe it doesn't, and it doesn't exist to our realm, because that same culprit that's making us think they're all the bad guys and making them think they should hate us, well, they're not letting us know. It doesn't exist in our realm that those conversations are happening. Ricky, I have bonded with him and loved him since the beginning of time. That tells me, especially, he's got his new, I think their fiance, girlfriend, Nalette. Another girl he met that didn't grow up in our same area. And yet I can tell just by the few times I've been blessed with having to experience her, we're of the same vein.
Yeah.
Live and let live, love each other. And yet she came from a totally different corner. So I think the takeaway is it clearly is being had. These conversations are being had. It's not only me and you and our pals are having it, but clearly Ricky and similar minds meeting us still in the middle ground tells us these conversations exist. And the evil culprit that is the media is what's still making us think it doesn't and preventing it from reaching our ears. Are there further comments?
Yeah. Ricky said he'll be here next week.
Hey,
all right.
Ricky, if we can get you in the studio.
No. Joe Biden will be here next week.
Oh, he's gonna be in Let.
Yeah,
Or
with him and his family.
Nantucket.
Him and his family go
boy.
there every year.
Really? Yeah, you know what? He was telling me how like difficult the island gets because there's Secret Service ever.
Oh
I mean-
yeah, it's not a big place. It's also not like a well infrastructured place either for that type of security systems to roll through.
Yeah, exactly.
Ooh. Ricky just said there are more Black Americans opening their eyes. Like I have my girlfriend loving Candace Owen now.
Ayo!
Oh yeah.
Dude, I'd vote for her for president any day. And that's the thing. Here's what's scary. So if you see how these like news anchors work, like Fox can't say what they want to say. So they got to bring a Black person to say it for them. Well, because then you can't defeat the idea just on the fact that you're racist. Now I actually have to confront the idea.
Yep.
So we just ignore the idea. What's funny is the liberal response to that is having kids speak their messages for them.
Okay.
Because then you can't ridicule the idea because it's coming from a kid. What are you doing fighting with a kid? Let the kid speak. So the second
the Greta Thunberg,
I was about to say, autistic Greta comes walking through, you got to bend the knee. So I think this was great dialogue. I truly appreciate Ricky getting involved. When it comes to wrapping thoughts for me, I think we need to remind ourselves the difference between racism and prejudice. People that are acting upon their recognition that we are different. That's called being a melting pot. We must embrace that. Yeah, we're going to appropriate each other. That's how that works. So either get out or let a girl have braids like that. Like figure it out. A white girl's either going to have beads and braids in her hair or you're not allowed to be here. We can't coexist if that's the case. So live and let live, but acknowledge that we're different. The second you start acting on treating people because they're different, that's the problem. And we need to snuff that out entirely. And finally, I liked your point, looking at the people that commit these crimes versus those that don't. Those that have coaches, parents, teachers, looking out for them and someone that they can lean on. These situations don't normally arise in their lives. And it's telling those that actually experience it. So in wrapping, this is a terrible story. It's sad that it exists. It shouldn't matter what the person looks like. If all lives matter, Black Lives Matter is saying all lives matter. We're just saying that our life matters too. But then, like Ricky has indicated many times, then this should bother you just as much as the others. And it clearly would and does. So I appreciate being able to have a fruitful dialogue on it. And I think, we're not going to solve this problem instance by instance, and we can't fix it totally, but we can start curbing the trend back the other way it was in the 90s if we allow ourselves to have real conversations like this. Wrapping thoughts, David?
Well, I think I want to point the viewers over to our reparations conversations. That's pretty much this, but then on the solutions end of that. So I point the good ladies and gentlemen here at home to go watch that back half of that episode, because I think that expands on this dialogue, but kind of goes a little deeper in the solutions. But for the most part, I agree with you on a lot of things. I think there is I do believe there is some prejudice and racism that is cropping up more and more, just due to, we see the pendulum swing one way, it's got to swing back the other way. And do we galvanize those individuals by just highlighting, a particular race can do no harm? And I'm afraid that I think we're going to see it's going to get worse before it's going to get a little bit better. Oof. But I do think you got to have these conversations. You got to be out here, and eventually we'll have a monoculture, so it really wouldn't matter. Right. Which I'm not looking forward to that. But that is one benefit of curbing racism, is we all just think the same, group think. Maybe the cybernetics might get rid of that. Might get rid of that in our brain. But it's, man, I always love these conversations because there's a lot of meat on these bones. So it's, we'll probably have a few more of these, I'm sure. Sure. It's not going away. The media's reaction to it's not going away. But, I think we suss it out, discuss it out here once we get a little more let's get the people involved, get them a little more. I'd love to get more comments, just kind of questioning us on it. 'Cause I'd like, hey, let's go mano y mano here on that.
Yeah. So flipping it to Brian, wrapping it up. I know you want to.
I'm actually going to stay on you guys. William Scatner said, kids or child actors.
What do you mean? What?
That's I asked him, but he hasn't responded yet.
Say it again.
Kids or child actors.
Oh, is he? I think what Mr. Scatner might be saying is, was this a plant, like crisis actors, so to say? Are these are they working on their own will and agency? I'm
believing this is a crisis acting situation, another psyop, because it doesn't exist. Had Louder with Crowder not brought this up, it would literally not exist to my world.
Yeah.
It wasn't on your news feed. It wasn't coming to you on TikTok. It isn't coming in the actual news or any formal report. So to our dialogue, it doesn't exist. That would be a wasted psyop. That wouldn't exist. That exists only at Sandia.
But no, I'm probably on the same vein of you as that. It's hard to have actor, it's hard to have a live person die while acting and kind of covering that up for.
Tell that to Elmer Floyd.
Oh, Jesus.
All righty. So, Brian, you want to get rapid thoughts or no?
No, I'm not going to touch the subject. I'm just going to leave it.
All right, folks. Guys, thank you for joining us. It was another great live. We do this every Tuesday at 7 p.m. It was a real blessing to have so many people involved, from John logging in and joining us in the first part talking about AI, and all the commenters that followed us throughout the episode. Thank you, because you're what makes this show great and worth doing. We want to have a fruitful dialogue that includes every perspective we can, and it keeps us on our toes, throws a monkey wrench in our momentum, and allows us to adjust and grow with you. So thank you for getting involved. Again, find us every Tuesday across the platforms. You can find us on X, Facebook. I was about to say Hinge.
Hinge? That would be an interesting one. We're going live on Hinge, boys.
No, find us all. If you want to check out more Rethink Tank content, obviously it's all here on YouTube, but you can find all content at our website at www.rethinktankpodcast.com. You can find me personally at Gergat57, or again, we'll see you next week. Otherwise, let me send it over. David, where can they find you?
You can find me on Instagram, the one and only, David Cunningham 7112. And Brian, where can I find you?
Find me on Instagram, BC Mall. And yeah, I'll leave it at that.
All right.
Appreciate you guys. Again, thank you for joining us. We'll catch you next week. Peace.
Yeah, it's not working. I don't know.
Peace out, guys.